Let's do this.
Create trust by doing the things you said you're going to do. Don't just say it. Immediately get busy and get it done and show someone that you meant what you said. The person that starts a business and says, I have to do everything by myself, I can't trust anybody, the business has limited growth potential.
On point.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of On Point. I'm your host, Taylor Burke, and I'm here with best-selling author, speaker, business coach, startup investor, and serial entrepreneur of more than 20 businesses. Give it up for the #1 Amazon best-selling author of The Power of Strategic Influence, Gary Laney.
Taylor, thank you. It's so nice to be here with you.
It's so nice to be here with you. Thank you.
And finally meet you.
I know. So you've spent 25 plus years as a top well-known
Executive in commercial publishing and high tech.
Amazing.
High tech software.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you are known for your ability to turn these companies around and create dynamic, dramatic revenue growth. So let's kind of start there.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of grew up in sales.
Okay.
Even though I got my MBA and got into consulting, but in the real world, when I was in management, it was in sales management, kind of the CRO, kind of the sales chief sales leader, vice president of sales. So I'm going to back up because before the 25 years, I grew up in a family business. My dad was an entrepreneur, never worked for anyone, and so for 20 years, I learned all the aspects of a business growing up in a retail chain business. And so, I started out at the bottom, stocking shelves. We were a retail business, mostly mercantile, clothing, electronics, kind of the predecessor to the Walmarts and stuff that weren't existing back then.
Mm-hmm. And was this in Utah?
It was in Utah. We had stores outside of Utah, but it was where I got started.
Okay.
And so I kind of moved up the ranks and got into accounting, got into, marketing, advertising, and ultimately managed a store for my father and then bought one of his last stores before he retired.
And so you didn't want to do that forever. So you end up leaving that, or what happened with that?
My dad, from the time I was a little kid, said, "You're going to run my business someday."
Uh-huh.
I said, "No, I'm not."
You were thinking bigger.
And my brothers and sisters, same thing. We don't want to own the business. We don't want to be involved. But we, because it was you have to work on weekends, Saturdays and stuff, and nobody really liked that. Mm-mm. But I did it. It was an amazing, education for getting into business. And so later when I got into owning my own businesses, buying my own businesses, starting my own businesses, and have done that for the last 18 years now in 20 different businesses, it's been exciting to be able to know what to do, how to approach things, not be afraid to jump into it. I understand the financial side of it very well, but the marketing side I'm very good at. I have 2 degrees in marketing, and the sales has been the forte.
Okay. And what would you say, how did this family business help set you up for going into other businesses into who you are today?
Listen, any business has the same components. And so whether you have what I'm calling the subject matter expertise in that business, like CRM, for example, is very, very specific to how you run a business on the sales support and marketing side. But the components are the same. I mean, you have to have a target market. You have to know how to approach the market. You have to have a script for your salespeople. Then you have to know how to follow up, go through a sales process, get it to the closure. When that's all done, when you hand it off to customer service, customer support, and professional service, they have to know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And they have to have the expertise to retain the client, make them happy, and continue that relationship.
How was it for you to juggle all that? Because being an executive, it's not just sales. It's not just marketing, right? It's all of that combined.
Yeah, when you own the business, you're wearing many hats, especially a small startup. You wear many hats all at once, not just once in a while. So when you work for high tech, when I was working for a large company, I could really focus on one area, and I had a team to help me do that. I had times where my teams would be from 20 up to 400, and so depending on what the kind of company I had and the size of the company and the resource you had, you could really accelerate when you could just focus and have resources to be able to do that. When you're doing it on your own, anybody that started a startup, got involved in it, knows it takes a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights, and takes endurance to be able to stay to the point where you actually get critical mass with your clients and you can actually have success. For example, when I left high tech, I had children that were in school and I was missing a lot of stuff, and I decided I would leave high tech and the corporate world to be able to spend time with my family and be home. So I decided, well, I'm gonna start a business. I really didn't know which one to start, and when you buy little businesses, I didn't have the luxury of saying I can wait and see if it's going to be successful because I needed to have the cash flow that was going along with those businesses. So I actually traveled the country. Very few people know this. I actually traveled and researched over 200 businesses. I bought 7 small businesses, and then I just told myself I'm going to follow the money. And so if one worked out well, I would continue to do that and see where it went, and then add marketing and advertising and support to it. And I did that with about 4 of the 7. 3 of them didn't do much. I didn't really lose money on them, but I didn't keep them. I got rid of them.
Okay.
But the other 4 continued to do well, and they were in different aspects of e-commerce for the most part, because e-commerce was really hot. Just getting going, about 15 or 20 years ago.
My question for that, Gary, is when you left your high-tech job and you went out traveling to find these 7 businesses, did you have money saved up already that you could buy them? Or was it like taking a loan out and then you bought one and then got money and then bought another and like that process?
Yeah, I had some retirement savings, but I really couldn't take that out. And so I decided to use an equity loan.
Okay. How did that work out for you?
It worked out great.
Okay.
It worked out great. So I had a lot of confidence that I wouldn't fail, that I would be able to succeed. And so I knew if I just had a product that had some response and the product was decent, it would get the value and the work done, I wouldn't have a problem.
And can you tell us which of the 4 businesses succeeded that you bought?
Sure. I mean, I got in. I like to do things kind of in families of products, etc. So I decided I bought this business called babychangingstations.com.
Okay.
And not too many people know I owned that, but it was they were a distributor of Koala brand baby changing stations. You see in all the airports all over the world. Well, so that was something I bought. It was a business that was just getting started. They weren't succeeding, and they were going to close it down. And I said, well, might be an interesting one. I think I can turn this around because it just needs good marketing, good advertising, and it needs somebody to care about the clients. So I started that. 7 years later, it was a multi-million-dollar business, and it was a very successful business. And so that was probably the foremost of the business I had. Kind of related to that because it was in the baby changing, but we sold anything to do with washrooms and office space and playgrounds. So it was much more than that, but the name was that.
Well, I was going to say, I totally know Koala. I mean, every time I go to the bathroom, maybe it's because I'm a woman, I always see it in the stalls.
No, men's have them too.
Yes.
We change babies too.
That's true. That's not, I didn't mean it like that.
No, but you're right.
Yes,
I mean, probably more in the women's restrooms than anything. But
and then why did you think it was failing, and what did you do specifically? Like, what did you target? Because now it's so popular. Well,
when I bought this business, I didn't buy Koala. I bought the distributorship, one of the distributorships for Koala, and basically, the person that was managing it just wasn't succeeding. He was not getting enough sales. There wasn't enough residual income. There wasn't the recurrence of the repeat orders that you expect from a client base like that, because contractors build buildings and put in restrooms, and they should be buying from you every time they do that if you take care of them. Same thing with airports, same thing with churches. I mean, so I was really targeting a different type of client than the previous owner had been. So I decided to go after those repeat businesses, a lot of contractors, a lot of churches. In fact, when the Olympics were in China, I was able to contract with the guy that was going to do the restrooms for the new airport. And we sold those baby change stations for all the restrooms there. So that was kind of a cool quarter. And then I was a high-tech corporate guy. So I decided I can sell this to corporate America too. Nobody had ever tried to do that. I mean, I sold to Intel and a lot of big companies that normally wouldn't think of when you had this distributorship.
And was it a huge hit right away, or did it take time?
It took time. It took. I was doubling my sales and tripling my sales every year. But it was, this was like a $50,000 to $100,000 business when I bought it, which I didn't have to pay a lot for it, luckily. But every year I was going double, triple. And ultimately, it was a multi-million-dollar business, but it took years to get to that point.
How did you not give up? I mean, just because right away you were getting in that income? Because I know a lot of people, sometimes they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes about 5 years. What can you say to the entrepreneurs listening to this? Like, hey, don't give up, or any advice you can give? Well,
don't take on too much debt, number one. I mean, get into something that already has, it already has some proof of viability, so that that there's client opportunities out there and it really just needs attention. And so that was my deal, and I was making, I had positive cash flow in the first 6 months, which is kind of unusual after you buy a business. Mm-hmm. But that happened, and then it became profitable and to the point where it was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It was good business, and that was just one of the businesses I had, but that was the one that probably was the most fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. How are you able to turn around revenue growth? You talk about this on your LinkedIn, a little bit in your book also, but what are the steps of catching the company sinking and then being able to fix it?
Before I buy a business, I always look at the financials, and I look at what are the things that we could cut out, that are wasteful. There's a lot of waste in the expenses and what people use, and a lot of things where you might outsource, which I believe in, but you don't always have to outsource. Sometimes you can do that in-house, and it's much cheaper, and it's not so hard to do, and you don't have to wait. I mean, so a great thing about a startup and a small company is you can make a decision now and have maybe sometimes results, within that same week. Whereas you go to an outsourced type of vendor, it might take you weeks or even months because they're juggling all these different clients to do the same thing for you that they're doing for someone else. And so I think that it's number one is just trying to figure out how you can reduce the expense load. Number two, how you can raise the bar as far as how you approach the clients so you can get them to be happy. Who are the most likely customers that you can get repeat business from? Because if we can repeat and get a recurrence, that recurring revenue model going, then you have something going that you can use as a base, so you don't have to worry about it, and then you just grow it from there.
Okay, and how would you do that, though?
Depends on the business. Okay, so I mean, some businesses you can do everything through, today it's social media, and you can do it organically if you do a good job in indexing the key terms if it's an online kind of business. So if you can get to that point where you're getting leads and people are coming to you, then you're in great shape. If you have to pay for advertising, which I did, I mean, initially I didn't have much natural SEO built into my businesses. And so I had to go to Google, and I paid a lot of money on Google AdWords. Mm-hmm. But then you have to, how do I make these AdWords, effective so I'm not spending so much money? And if I am going to spend money, I darn want to make sure that I get some response from the people that are clicking on it. And so once you get them to there, then how do you retain them on the website so you have good software to be able to make contact with them, to follow up with them, get some information so you can get to them, and then give them an incentive to start with you and then continue on, hopefully.
And my question to that is kind of random, but you said today, for instance, marketing is huge in social media, but you started companies back in 2000s. What did you think was successful? I mean, social media wasn't really booming then.
It's true.
What did you find was like the key back then?
So I did all this like in 2004, 2005. Uh-huh. That's when I broke away from corporate. And Google was the answer. I mean, so Facebook was trying to do the same thing. They were trying to get people in, let them to advertise and get some kind of response, but it was really just, a consumer, front and product at that time. But Google AdWords became an amazing opportunity for so many businesses that took advantage of it. If you knew how to create the right terms, you knew how to, compete and bid for the advertising, you could get an amazing response. And let's say the click cost me $2 per click, and it took 20 clicks to make a sell. Well, your profit has to be above that, or you're not going to keep doing it. And so you look at different terms every week to make sure the terms that you're getting clicks and advertising response from, that they're actually giving you sales back. And you just keep tweaking it every single week to make sure that you get the right terms. And you get to the point where the terms are just working really well. Mm-hmm. And now we go back to the customers and say, how do we give them get more business from them? How do we make them happier? How do we add new products to what they're buying so they don't keep going to other vendors? We become more of a one-stop shop for them for the types of things that we sell.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that Google Ads and that whole thing is still common today?
Still is, but it's much more competitive. It costs a lot more to do it today.
Yeah.
So back then you could have clicks, and they'd sometimes be 20, 40, 50, 60 cents. We feared having someone, clicking on a $2 or $3 click, and in competition, you worried that they would do it and just try to get rid of your term, because as soon as you have a budget, let's say I have a $50 budget for this term for the day, and if somebody was trying to be, deceptive, and Google tried to watch this, we tried to watch it, they could click on that 20 times, and then it would erase your term. It would be off the page, and so you couldn't compete. So you have to be really careful that you're watching your budget, that that's not happening. You can report if you think there's something going on, but that was the fear. But they had the same fear. So if we sensed that we could do it to them, we didn't. But that could happen. I'm sure some of it did. Everything I know today, I would love to take back with me.
Of course.
Right. So I mean, the intelligence, and especially what I wrote in my book, if we talk about it today, is that relationships really matter. Learning how to develop strategic relationships that are well fitted, that help you get into the industry with people that want to help you back, mm-hmm. and learning how to navigate through those waters to get to the right people that can help you do that. They have to realize also that you have value to give to them. People don't just give you things most people don't just give you things without expecting something in return. I try to teach it a different way in my book, but for the most part, when you're growing up, you have to learn how to, take value, give it to somebody, and they'll want to help you back.
I feel like that's a perfect segue. Speaking of things that we wish we knew when starting a business, you have a new book. It is called The Power of Strategic Influence, and it really breaks down the secrets of using your personal influence to create success. What was your motivation for writing this book?
So back in 1979 and then going forward, I was working as a salesman in college, trying to get through and doing well. It was a good experience. And I had the opportunity to read a book by a guy named Stephen R. Covey called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then Stephen became a professor of mine. In an organizational behavior class, I had to choose one of my electives, and that wasn't one of them. And then he became an advisor to the company I was working for, which was really cool. So not only did I get a chance to know him as a professor, read his book.
Small world.
But, oh my gosh, this guy ended up being an advisor for the company. I was moving up in the company into management, and then he became a mentor for many years during that process where I got to know him personally. I got to know his book inside and out, all the principles inside and out, and teach them to salespeople over the last 35 years. And so during that whole process, I learned how to extend some of the principles, and I started adding on to it. And so influence became a huge factor in my life, in my business, in my relationships. And I knew that you had to guard them carefully. You have to learn how to make people understand that you were there, that there was a trusted partnership. And if you could do that, then they would do things for you and vice versa. So I knew someday I was going to write a book about this. Mm-hmm. And I knew the extensions of what I'd learned from Stephen Covey back in those days could be a book, a standalone book on its own that wouldn't have to have his book supported in it necessarily. But the principles were kind of progressive. I've wanted to write this book for 15 years.
Yeah.
But I didn't decide to write it until COVID.
Oh.
So I've always wanted to. I couldn't justify the time in sales, when you're running a national sales group or worldwide group, you just have no time to yourself. I mean, when you're home, you're home. But then when you're gone, you're just completely eaten up by all the demands by the sales force and the people that go with it. Luckily, I had some motivation because my daughter, my granddaughter, and my wife were all writing. And so they had this contest. They were supposed to write 50,000 words in a certain amount of time. And my granddaughter had already published her book, and now she's on her second book. She's quite an amazing young lady. And so I said, wow, I'm just going to jump in, see if I can follow their lead, really not knowing if I would actually ever complete a book. But I got the first chapter done, and then I mapped out one night. I stayed up all night and mapped out what I call this table of contents roadmap. And it just kind of worked magically from there. Every week I had a researcher, I had a graphics artist, I had kind of a team I developed, professional team, and we worked together, and every week we were pumping out another chapter. So 12 chapters. After that point, it took about 3 months to get the writing done.
That's it?
That's it. And then I'd made my goal to do this in 6 months, and it takes about 3 months to actually publish a book at minimal if you're doing it as a self-publishing. I was talking to traditional publishers like McGraw-Hill, Simon & Schuster, but they said it takes 2 to 3 years to go through their process, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to have it. I wanted it on the street. I wanted to be able to market it and turn it into a business. So 3 months, had an editor. We did a very excruciating editing process. The graphics came together. Then we had to do the cover, and then we had to come up with a marketing plan. And so I hired a company to help me do that. So it took 6 months in total, and we had the book out the door.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
I was expecting you to say like 2 years from the start of COVID in March all the way to recently, but no, that's amazing. You don't really hear about people pumping that out so fast.
Well, I'm not Danielle Still or some of these, Michael Crichton or some of these guys, but I mean, I knew what I wanted to write about for the most part, even though it's out there. It's not really organized, and so I had to organize it. And that's what really helped a lot, is understanding what the process was. And my book was easier to write, I think, for me because it was my life. It's a very progressive track. It's step by step. How do you start with no influence and grow to something where you have major influence? And I've got semi-major influence now. Someday I might have more. It's like some of these people I call centers of influence. But I think that's why people relate to my book, because it's step by step. And you can jump into the book and say, where do I belong in this book? What sphere of influence do I belong in? Where am I at currently? So I started with, my book's about how do you develop influence? How do you access it? How do you develop it? How do you expand it? How do you share it? So I decided I'm going to go with people I know to begin with and use my own process to find the interviews. So I started with 3 people, and during the interviews, they just offered naturally to say, wow, they thought it was a great interview. I was happy to hear that, and they wanted to say, would you like to have more people to interview? And I said, yeah, absolutely, yes. I need 6 men, I need 6 women. And so that just became just a roll out kind of a procedure where they would suggest people to me. I looked at them. We made a good fit, and we made the offer to see if they would like to be interviewed, and had great response. And then so I interviewed each of them individually.
Mm-hmm. And I know you said that some of the CEOs fit perfectly with some of your chapters, but did you ever have a hard time with some of the CEOs that you chose and finding the right chapter to put them into?
Well, the interesting part is they knew they're going to be assigned to a chapter.
Oh.
And so some of them would say, well, what chapters do you have left? And I actually had a couple who said, I would love to be in that chapter because I think my background fits better. And so that happened to some of the time. The rest of the time it didn't. I had like 3 that did that. The rest, one night again, I just put my chapters out. I put the interviews, and I did a little matching game, and it just kind of turned out really well.
How does one gain influence? That's the whole thing what your book is about, but kind of bringing it back to the basic. What is influence, and how does one even gain it?
Well, we have influence by just being here. Because you're a show, because of your experience, because of what you're doing, the company you represent, that made me want to be here today. So there's influence just by the fact that there's motivation to do something because something else happened, or because of experience, or because of opportunity. So to me, influence is nothing more than the ability to be able to impact something. And I always say positively, because there can be negative impact as well as positive impact. So to me, influence, I only think of the influence in a positive way based upon trust. So if you want to have influence, you develop many experiences and relationships, and as many as you can, where there's trust as the core and the foundation of that relationship. Then you have influence with those certain people. You're creating a sphere of influence. Stephen Covey used to talk about a circle of influence. I like sphere because it's 3-dimensional. There's volume. It's multi-sided. Because I think if you have the ability to be able to have a relationship with trust, then you have influence, and reciprocally that person has influence on you. So it goes both ways. So now I have this little circle with a few of us, and we all want to represent each other. We all trust each other, and we'll help each other. You just continue to expand that. So it's just about relationships. So I teach that you should be making connections every day of your life with the intention of finding those special relationships you can bring into your inner sphere of influence.
And why would you say that this is important?
Because you can't do everything in life by yourself. So my second chapter, I talk about being self-reliant, my success factor 2. In the real world, self-reliance is not even realistic. Self-reliance to me means that you have the ability through relationships and resources to get things done. But if you had to do it all yourself, manufacture everything, make everything happen, you could never do it. So imagine going to an island, and now you're in a survival mode, and you have to take care of everything: food, water, clothing, shelter. Here, we don't have to do that. We rely on somebody else. We pay them money, they give it to us, and they provide it. So we work together in this integrated, synergistic way. So you have to be self-reliant to the point where you can access people to do that. Influence is required so that we can help each other want to do that. There's motivation to want to help each other. And we do that because we have trust in our relationship.
And then my question to that is, we keep saying trust, and that trust helps us gain influence. But what about like age, social status, experiences? We kind of touched on experiences, but I also feel like age and social status kind of has something to do with it also.
Well, age, I've met young people that seem like they have more knowledge and wisdom than some older people I've met. Mm-hmm. So I really think it's all about the individual and the ability that they have to be able to garner the knowledge and the experience that they need to be able to accomplish the task at hand. So, but listen, with age comes wisdom usually, and with reputation, which is from social media, is from experience, is from your expertise, is from the things and the people that know about you. It's a package deal. If we say influence, that's really a complicated concept, right? But when you really step back from it and say, well, it's really about just the relationships. If I'm looking selectively for the right kind of people to be with that can provide positive impact to me and me to them, and I can keep adding to that, you're going to have lots of influence, both from you to them and them to you.
That's awesome. Okay. Could you break down that for us? And then I guess, how do they turn influence into success? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
No, it's actually not. I mean, so one of my spheres is called opportunity. So how do you turn influence into opportunity? So it's this progressive track. You can't expect to do it from day one. If you go into a community where you have no influence, nobody knows you, and you don't know anyone, you don't have a lot of influence. You better have some money. You better have some skill sets. You better have something if you want to survive. But over time, as people get to know you, they want to help you, especially if they trust you because you've done something for them. They know that you're positive and you're going to provide a positive impact on anything you do.
Even in your book, you talk about when people move to new companies or people move to different cities, right? It's hard sometimes to gain that influence. And I guess, how do they build that to success? So like just taking time and building the trust of people in your sphere. Is that what you're saying?
Well, every person I interviewed, I asked the question, if I were to throw you on an island, you had no lifeline, all you have is your skill sets and your knowledge, you don't have any money, maybe enough for a couple of days, how would you survive? I asked all these great CEOs that question. And without fail, everyone said, well, we would do whatever it takes to survive, number one. So I'm going to think about me, number one. I need food on my plate. I need to have a place to sleep at night. I need to keep my health. And once I have that, I'm going to start expanding, trying to develop a network of social influence where I can actually help someone. So my next task is, what can I do, what do I have that I can do to help somebody else? Once you solve a problem for someone else, there's almost immediate trust to some degree, because they think, oh, this person's responsible. Oh, this person helped me. This person helped me solve a problem. So years ago, I was sitting with a person that I was trying to get to know. We were in business. We're trying to develop a relationship. And I expected that we would just have an agenda where we talk about how we can help each other. During that process, though, in getting to know each other, I divulged a couple of challenges I had. That person had a unique ability to help me with one of the challenges and offered it right away without knowing very much about me. It created this instant likeliness of wanting to get to know this guy and to understand more about him. And the fact that he wanted to help me right off the bat, and he did, made me want to help him back. And so there was this relationship that was growing and trust developing much faster than it normally would, because we were just immediately trying to help each other with certain problems. But I'm telling you right now, if you can learn how to help to solve problems, to offer first, you'll get a response that you never expected. Mm-hmm. Some people are worried that, what if I do this and I don't get anything back? Mm-hmm. You can't be calculated. You can't calculate the situation and try to see what am I going to get back. You have to say, I'm going to do it, and what comes back, comes back.
You also touch on in your book how one needs to build a great reputation. And I feel like that really does go hand in hand with influence, what we've been talking about. But why is reputation important, and what should one do to get a good reputation?
Wow. Well, John Hewitt, who I mentioned earlier, would say, do what you said you're going to do. Create trust by doing the things you said you're going to do. Don't just say it. Immediately get busy and get it done and show someone that you meant what you said. So reputation is all about what people think about you. And reputation can be bad or good. So if you want a good reputation, a positive reputation, you want people to think of you kindly and want to extend and go over the line to help you, then you have to start by helping them. And so the more you do that with more people, the more you follow through on what you said you're going to do, the more reputation you have of being trustworthy, I think the more reputation you're going to have, and more people are going to want to do things for you.
What do you say to the people who have currently a bad reputation but want to turn a new leaf and start gaining that good reputation? Do you have any words of wisdom? Just
start with the basics. I mean, small things every day. People say things intentionally meaning well, but then they don't do it. So I'm going to call you. Well, do it. Don't wait 3 weeks to call the person. Or I'm going to introduce you to this person. Get it done today. Get in the habits of doing small things right away so you don't have to worry about it. I'm kind of known for that. So if I say I'm going to do something, I stop everything and I do it right now. And if I can do it, David Allen and getting things done, the guy that was so famous for productivity, he'd say, well, listen, if you could do it in 5 minutes, do it right now. If you can do it in 30 minutes, schedule it and get it done today. If it's going to take more than 30 minutes, then schedule it sometime during the next week, but get it done. But schedule it. I mean, actually put it on your calendar, schedule it with the person you're going to do it for, and let them know that's going to happen. So just, it's 1, 2, 3. It's easy stuff like that, and it'll start to get into a habit-forming thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I never even think about that because sometimes I'll say I'll get it done, but it does take me a couple days. So I guess this is a good learning lesson to even me to just get it done.
Every day is a new day. So you have to pick your battles every single day. So you have to have goals for the things you're going to do in each day, but there should be some element of an opportunity to be able to help someone during the day. I'll give you an example. I was in Las Vegas years ago, and I've told this story a few times. And I was leaving this meeting I was getting out of. It was a networking meeting. And I had a rental car, and I started to drive it, and I noticed I had a flat tire. So I got out of the car, and luckily I wasn't in a busy place, and I was calling AAA to see if I can get somebody to come and haul me away, pick me up. In the meantime, this gentleman in a suit comes over. I don't know where he came from. I'm telling you, I don't remember seeing where he came from. He just showed up and says, I'm going to do this for you. I said, what? He's waving his hand. He said, I can help you. I can do this. I said, do what? Change your tire. I said, you're in a suit. He says, I've done this. I come from a family. We do stuff like this. I said, I'm on the phone still while I'm talking to this guy. And so I give him the key. He opens the trunk. He pulls out the tire, pulls out the jack, starts to change my tire. On his knees in his dress pants, takes off his jacket. Before I know it, he's changed my tire, and he's put it in the back. The reason I didn't do it is because I had my suit on. I didn't want to get all dirty. This great, amazing guy, his name is John Durant. I'll just give you his name because I've written about him. He decided to just do it for me. Well, it took me months to find this guy because as quickly as he appeared, he disappeared. Because I was on the phone, I tell him, AAA, I don't need you anymore. I turn around, he's gone.
He didn't even talk to you or anything?
No. After it was over, he just disappeared. And I said, where did that guy go? He'd mentioned something while we were talking about him being a CTO of this high-tech company. And so we were in kind of a business park. So I determined I'm going to find this guy. So when I was back there, every month or two, but it took me months doing research, looking at the business park, calling, the company that managed the park. Finally, we identified this software company that sounded like it might be. And so this one day after a meeting, I walked into this office in the reception area and said, I'm looking for this guy named John that helped me change my tire months ago. And the guy that was in there says, I've heard about you. He said something to me about that happening that one day. And sure enough, it was the right place. He went and got him. He came out, and we spent the next hour or two together talking about it. But I said, why did you do that? Why did you stop him? Because listen, he's a very busy guy. He's a high-tech executive, and he saw that I was in need. I was an out-of-stater, out-of-town guy, and he knew it's something he just knew how to do very easily. So he just took care of it. So I would do anything for this guy now because he just took the time to do that for me. So every day you pick your battles. You spend your time, you manage your life and your business, but when you see an opportunity, that's when you do it. We always think, wish I had time for that. But if you can justify, and sometimes you can reschedule something quickly and just take care of somebody and help them. So I think every single day there's opportunities like that, every single day. And if you get in the practice of doing that, you'll be amazed at how much of that will come back to you later on because people will realize that you're that kind of a person.
Yeah. Oh my God. What amazing stories, Gary. I love that.
Every day, millions of people are booking beauty and fitness businesses on the Pagaro Marketplace. When a client arrives, they can check themselves in and complete any forms you require on the same screen. Because your business should be efficient, from classes to payments. Clients can make additional purchases quickly and easily. Business is seamless with the right software at your side.
In your book, you detail 6 spheres of influence: perspective, accountability, relationships, leadership, opportunity, and strategic influence. What do each of those 6 spheres mean?
I've taught different concepts about spheres of influence in the past. And for the book, I wanted it to be very easy to follow, step by step, so that somebody could get into and understand it. So I kind of redefined some of them when I wrote the book. So I'll start with perspective. So perspective, basically, and you'll notice if you look at the graphic in my book, there's a telescope or a periscope.
Yes, on the front of the book.
In the front of the book. And so basically you are thinking in the future. So we haven't started anything yet. It's the beginning, it's the preparation, it's getting ready for a journey that you're going to begin. Journey in your life, in your marriage, in your business, in your company, whatever you're working on. So perspective means, okay, what do I have to worry about in perspective? Number one, I need to count the costs up front. That basically means that I have to have what I call a survival mindset. No matter what life throws at me, I must be willing to say, I can get past this. I've already made the decision before I ever start the process, before I ever start the journey. So survival means I'm ready to take on whatever happens. Whether I'm happy with it or not, I'm not going to pass the buck. So that's what that's all about. And the second aspect is, because we're looking forward, now we're going to focus on what I call networking. So this book is really about networking, if you think about it, because we're trying to develop a network, a sphere network of great people in our lives. Mm-hmm. So I'm focusing before I begin the process that I and agreeing and committing to myself that I need to have people in my life that can help me accomplish these goals that I'm about to embark on. The next one is accountability. So now we begin, right? So now we begin the process, and so what does accountability mean? You tell me.
To me, it's kind of what you touched on before. Don't say something that you're not going to do. So accountability to me is if you say you're going to do it, do it.
Thank you. So the first success factor. So we have perspective, which is a sphere, but doesn't have success factors because we haven't begun the process yet. We have perspective points. Now we get into spheres that actually are doing something. Accountability, which means I have to do something to be accountable. And so my first success factor, there's 10 of them, for the next 5 spheres, is to accept personal responsibility. For example, if I say, do you consider that anything that happens in your life you're responsible for? What would you say?
Yes.
Ooh, okay. Some people, if I said, what percentage of the time of the things that occur in your life are your responsibility, what would you say?
I'd say most of it.
Not everybody says that.
Really?
A lot of people say, I'm on the freeway and somebody hits me and I didn't know where they're coming from. Is it my responsibility for that? It's a big question, because depending on how you answer that question will determine how your day goes and how maybe the rest of your week or month goes. Because if you're going to blame somebody else for what happened, you're going to spend time being a victim about what's going on, you're going to hold your life hostage in a sense where you really can't progress.
Well, Gary, what would you say? Would you say that you're responsible?
So today I say I'm 100% responsible. Okay. I haven't always said that.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because I'm 100% responsible for my reaction to what happens to me today. So something happens, I'm going to take responsibility for how I'm going to react to that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, meaning I'm not going to sit and complain and blame other people and stop my progress. I need to keep progress. I need to keep moving forward. I can't do that if I stop and start pointing fingers. Mm-hmm. So accepting personal responsibility just means that I'm going to take responsibility for my life, how I respond to things, and to take charge. Because the sooner you can take charge and say, I'm going to work around this problem. There's a problem. I didn't cause it, but I'm going to work around it. I'm going to take responsibility to get it done and get over it. Now, the next thing is accountability is I mentioned this self-reliance. And the chapter says, be self-reliant. But during the chapter, we say, you realize you can't really ever be self-reliant 100% because you have to rely on other people to be self-reliant. So that's the concept. Number one, we can do it, but we have to do it together. Mm-hmm. And we can all become very independent in a sense that we can accomplish things if we know how to help each other do it.
A lot of people think that they can do it alone, that they shouldn't ask for help or that they shouldn't rely on others. But here you are saying that the best way to do that is to rely on the people around you.
Yeah, anybody a person that starts a business and says, I have to do everything by myself, I can't trust anybody, the business has limited growth potential. The more you say, I can rely on good people. I mean, Steve Jobs says, I hire good people because they're smarter than me, and I let them do their thing, because why would I try to tell someone who's smarter than me how to do what they do? Mm-hmm. So we always have to say, I have the ability, I have skill sets, and I'm going to do my best job at this. I'm going to rely on other people to help me do the same thing on things I don't have experience in.
But you know how a lot of people say, like, well, no one can do it better than me. Like, they just know how to get it done, and sometimes when they rely on people, it just doesn't get done the way that they would do it. What do you say to that?
Well, it's true. I mean, some of those things are true. I mean, I've owned many businesses, and I know that I could probably do some of those things better, but I can't do them all at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you have to be willing to sacrifice to some degree and then keep looking for the right person that can actually do it maybe even better than you, or at least as good as you, but at first probably won't be. So it takes trust. Believe me, when you know you could have made that sale, you could have done a better job at closing, you could have done a better job at saving the customer, you have to give that person a chance to fail. Otherwise, they'll never learn. And it's hard to do that, especially when you know there's money on the line. Mm-hmm. So, but I think...
Or reputation on the line.
Or reputation as well. We're going from perspective, thinking about where we're going, to accountability. I'm deciding up front that I'm going to take responsibility for the things that happen in my life. Now we move into relationships. We can't do anything without that relationship opportunity. That means that that I'm in this focus to have networking, as I decided in this perspective point. Now I'm saying I need to fill my life with highly influential people that can help me get where I want to go. So the question is, how do you make access? How do you get access? How do you make contact with these great people like I interviewed on the back of the book? Reputation. You don't do it overnight. You don't do it when you're very young. It takes you time. I mean, some people can do better than others in getting there, but you have to develop a reputation for being solid, trustworthy, competent. And then people that know about that have experienced that with you, can say, I vouch for this person. So I'm going to keep adding those one by one, adding creating this network of influential people, because they can help me get places. And by the way, I'm ready to jump in and help them in anything I can, anything I can do. Next is saying, okay, I've got all these connections I'm making with hopefully somewhat influential people. You start with people that have less influence, and you get to the point where you're with people that have a lot of influence that could do something for you that you never do for yourself.
When you're reaching out to these people at first, and I guess this could be not just with these people that you're talking to, but anyone in general, you don't go in right away like, hey, can you help me, because then I'll help you. How do you build to that, or how do you get in contact with them when they might not think that you have anything valuable to add to them? Yeah.
Well, so my concept is you have to give first. Don't ask. So if I went to somebody who's highly influential, I got a meeting with them, for some reason they decided to meet with me, and it's going to be because somebody else said they should meet with me. I need to go prepared with a plan, with a proposal of what I can do for them right off the bat. Okay, so don't go in and ask, hey, I need to meet this other person, or I want to get into this industry, or if you ask that question, they're going to say, I'm sorry, good luck.
Yeah.
Because I don't know you. I can't trust you when I don't know you. And so give them a reason to know you. Give them a reason to see why they should help you. So offer value first. Then hopefully there will be an exchange where they'll want to do something for you. And then you have to develop and nurture that relationship somehow, to keep in contact, keep doing something to make them want to stay in contact with you. They're very busy people. Why would they want to add one more person that's going to take some of their time?
My question to you is, how much is too much? You said to keep that relationship going, but how do you not cross that line of getting like annoying, pestering? You know what I mean? Because these people are pretty busy too. You don't want to cross that line of, okay, this is not friendly anymore. This is kind of annoying.
It can become annoying. Okay. So, but you have to just say, listen, this is a very busy person. I'm only going to contact this person when there's a real reason to do it. So what I'm offering, could they get it from anybody? Don't call them and say, hey, I've got this public number that you need, that anybody can get for you. Yeah, annoying means you're always trying to keep in contact, but have no good reason to do it. Right?
Okay.
So you need to make sure there's a real valid reason that justifies it. And even when you think that you should do it, you should stop and say, is this the right time?
Okay.
I mean, try to qualify it. Is this the right time? Is there a better time? Are we going to be somewhere? We're going to be together, or I can actually do it then? Is that a better, more familiar, more comfortable space? And me bugging them, taking them out of a meeting, trying to do something. So,
okay.
So it's a touch and go thing.
Yeah.
But I think you have to keep asking yourself, is this the right time? And do I have the right information? And do I have the right value to offer them at this time?
Okay, so kind of just be aware.
But let me tell you something. Once you develop a relationship with that person, where over time they'll start reaching out to you. And now it's kind of the other direction, and then they're a little concerned about bothering you. When you get to that stage, you have a great relationship. So we're going on this path, right? So we went to relationships, and now at some point, as you get these relationships and you've had experience and you have a reputation that you talked about earlier, people are going to start telling you that you are important to these groups of people, which means you're an influencer. And so at some point you have to stop and say, wow, people think I influence. People call me an influencer. I better step up to the plate. So the first part of that sphere is I need to assume the role of what an influencer is. It means I need to be objective, I need to be responsible, I need to be and care about how I'm representing myself as this person that other people think a lot of. Can't let them down. So that's really important that you learn how to do that. Well, so let me say this. Listen, people get advanced in their careers into a leadership position. Doesn't mean they're a leader. There's a paradigm shift that somebody has to go through to actually feel like a leader and actually do the things that leaders do. Some people get that responsibility. Doesn't mean they carry it very well. And the same thing with an influencer. If you're an influencer / leader, means you take the role seriously. You understand you don't have authority, to rule over people, as some leaders might think. Mm-hmm. You have an opportunity to help people. That's why you're in a leadership position, to help them excel, to expand, and become and reach the potential they really have the potential to reach.
You mentioned that some people might have these leadership roles, but they might not be a leader. What characteristics would you say that someone who is a leader has?
So that's my next fear.
Okay, I'm jumping in. No,
so we'll go into opportunity. So opportunity to me is, okay, I've gone through this procedure where I've learned how to access influence, in a good way. I've actually started to develop influence. I've become responsible, reputable. I've become a leader. People like what I'm doing. I'm helping people accomplish things. So at some point in your leadership, your career, you're at the point where you say, wow, it's time for me to really accelerate. I've got the skills, I've got the reputation. How do I use it in the best way to reach my true potential as a leader? So there's two aspects to this sphere. First one is, what are my motivations for doing what I do? You better be in an industry with a company, with people that you really feel like there was a purpose for you being there. So you should ask yourself. So I have, in the book, I talk about 7 different personal driving forces, I call them, which is your purpose, your motivation, your passion. So think of the things in your life, what motivates you, why you're doing what you're doing right now, and then is it enough for you to want to keep going? And especially when things get a little challenging, is it enough to compel you to keep going? Those are driving forces. The second aspect of it, which you just asked a minute ago, is what are the leadership qualities, you said. I call them competencies. And I did a survey with about 1,000 plus leaders before I started writing my book. Actually, I started writing the book, didn't feel like I had enough substance, and so I stopped and did this survey for a couple of months. And the questions were about this. What are the leadership qualities? What does influence mean to you? How does it equate to leadership? And so I was able to narrow down to 10 competencies that people should look at and decide that are important to them, that they should master, learn how to master, become a real leader. Because every leader will have some tendencies, some skill sets, but they certainly don't have all the skill sets they need. And I call them competencies. So some of those are networking. So do you know how to do strategic networking? Are you good in your company about knowing how to partner, find people, develop relationships that will actually help your company, and vice versa? Another one is, are you influential? Do you know how to influence people? When you get in front of a crowd, are you charismatic? People like to listen to you. They want to follow you. When you say something, does it compel them to want to do it? If they do, then you're influential. So we're kind of going up these 10 things. And one of them is vision sharing. When we talk and I get excited about something I want to do in the company, I'm the leader, or I'm one of the leaders, how do I get people excited about that? Well, I can't just come in and go drill down, top down, here's the plan, we're all going to do this. Leaders do that, okay? But it's much better if you go from the bottom up. Here's my vision, let's share it, and let's meet in the middle. So tell me what that means to you. How can we get there with my vision? What can you do to help do that? And we all buy into it, and all of a sudden we have a plan that we all feel like we have ownership in. That's called vision sharing. And
then lastly, we made it through the 5 spheres, but now the last one is the main one, strategic influence.
Well, so not everybody's going to get to that stage. Let me tell you what that means. It means that at some point after you've been a leader, and now you've accelerated through these driving forces and these competencies that you've been working on. By the way, Benjamin Franklin is a great example of this. He had fallacies and had deficiencies like anybody else, but he cared about them, cared about overcoming them. So he developed a list of 13 values that he would practice once a week, and it magically goes into a year 4 times. So 13 into 52 goes 4 times. So every week he would practice one of these 13, get through the 13, start all over again. So every year he got to practice for an entire week one principle, one value that he felt he needed to improve in his life. Everybody says, well, you have to work-life balance and do all this stuff and be able to do everything at once. You have to do a certain percentage of what you should be doing every day, but you're not going to be able to have focus on any one of them all the time. Mm-hmm. He said, let's do it for an entire week. I'm going to focus on this one attribute for an entire week, and did a great job at it. So basically what I'm trying to say is that for you to be able to become this epitome of a highly excelled leader, that if you do that and you're able to master many of those, the next chapter on strategic influence allows you to become what I call a center of influence. So think of the people in some industry. Who are the people you think of? The main person or persons in those industries that, like Steve Jobs, in the computer world, the Apple computer world, obviously, and Elon Musk, in electric cars. Mm-hmm. Those are centers of influence. In that industry, that's the person in the center that everyone wants to have access to. Mm-hmm. So my explanation here is that if you can get to that point where you can become a center of influence, you have an amazing ability to help millions of people sometimes. The best way to do that is by giving of yourself, not asking. You shouldn't be asking for more money. You should be asking, how can I help other people? And I give lots of examples in that last chapter called Giving Back. Dolly Parton, Andrew Carnegie, the Gates, Bill and his wife, and in their fund that they created. And they're basically saying, we have too much. Keanu Reeves is like that. He's embarrassed, he says, because he has so much money, so he gives it away. Dolly Parton was the same way. She could easily be a billionaire today, but she continues to give more away than she makes a lot of times. So that's a great opportunity if you can ever get to that point. And that's really what the chapter's about.
How did you come up with these 6 spheres? You said that you've been writing the book or thinking about the book for many years before then. When you finally broke it down, were those 6 spheres easy to choose?
No.
No.
So I created what I called success factors, and I put the teaching points underneath it, and I had to give it a name. And some of those names I'd been using for years, but perspective was one I didn't have before because I was always action-oriented. It's all about getting things done. But, Stephen Covey was really big on teaching you how to think, begin with the end in mind. That's one of his 7 habits. And so I had to have that at the beginning, and I thought perspective was the right thing because my whole book is about this theme about being on a ship, and I can see I can see someone looking forward, trying to get to where they're going, and having the skill sets to get there. And so I just wanted to make sure that each of those kind of fit the teachings that I was trying to.
I think it goes perfectly. So the takeaways from this book is that if you follow these 6 spheres, you can become more successful and make the world a better place.
Thank you.
Is there any other takeaways from this book?
Well, really, what do we have to take with us when we leave? We have our knowledge. We have the satisfaction of who we've helped, who we've loved. And then I've always heard that, people that have died and come back, they always said, well, could I have loved more? Could I have done more to help other people? So I think that's in the end. I'm older in my career. If I was younger, I might think a little differently, but I wish I had this perspective. As you asked me, what would you do differently if you were younger? Wish I had this perspective. Does your book work everywhere? And the answer is, well, relationships are relationships. That's my opinion. So I think you can go anywhere in the world, and if you are kind, and if you're a decent person, and you're doing things to help other people solve problems, these concepts will work anywhere. And the thing I learned during the process of writing this and the many years of experience I've had is that you don't self-proclaim yourself to be an influencer or a leader or a great person. That comes from the other people that actually, follow you, love you, support you, want to emulate the stuff that you teach. So that's really where you have to just keep fine,
So don't self-proclaim.
Yeah. Be careful you don't go over line and say, well, I'm great, I want to promote myself, and people do that to a certain extent with the selfies and the posts. We all have to promote who we are. Just don't go overboard and try to make you sound like you're proclaiming that you're the best of the best, because you just are. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because that doesn't come off well with others.
Doesn't. It's not very sincere.
Okay, well, I feel like that's a great note to end on. But Gary, before you leave, we're going to play a quick game.
Okay.
We are going to play Taylor's Would You Rather.
Uh-oh.
And I play this on every single podcast. I made up 8 Would You Rather questions, and I kind of made them about you, okay? So do you know what Would You Rather is?
No.
I'm going to give you 2 options, and you have to choose one of the options under 3 seconds.
Okay.
And it's just for fun. I'll give you 2 options, and you're going to choose one of them.
I have to choose one. Okay.
You have to choose one. Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Would you rather rewrite your book on a typewriter or with a feather and ink?
Typewriter.
Would you rather win $2 million or get a 5-series book deal?
A 5 series what?
Book deal.
Oh, I'll take the book deal.
Book deal. Yep. Would you rather do a book signing outside in the middle of a hurricane or write a book on a fishing boat in a storm in the middle of the sea?
Whoa. Those are both tough. I think because I love the sea so much, I'll do that. I don't get seasick. So I'll do that.
Okay, perfect. Would you rather work for Salesforce or would you rather work for Oracle again?
Well, Salesforce was my competitor, and Mark Benioff I've met in person, but I think I would do Oracle because that's where I had the first opportunity. But
okay, perfect.
Both really good companies.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Who would you rather be your boss, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, no question.
Would you rather only have money or only have fame?
I'll take the money. Because anyway, go ahead.
Yes. Would you rather read a book or listen to an audiobook?
Read a book.
Last one. Here we go. Would you rather be an executive but not have a good reputation, or have a good reputation but never move up in the company?
I'll take the second.
Have a good reputation but never move up.
Yep,
that's a good answer. Well, Gary, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. I had so much fun with you. I honestly truly feel like I learned so much.
Well, I did too. That's how I remember my book, by talking about it, right? So, yeah.
Well, you knew it all off the top of your head.
And I've read it. I've read this book more than any other book I've ever read before. I've read it like 12 times myself. So
I'm sure. Well, you wrote it, so it's easy to come to you. Well,
thank you,
Gary. I really appreciate it, and I'll be in touch with you. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear this.
Peter, thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Appreciate it.